Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to welcome you to another episode of our podcast, Today's Top Tech Leaders. The goal of this podcast, as always, is to share insights and knowledge of top CTOs and product leaders on their leadership and what they've learned throughout their journey. We'll cover management tips and tricks, organizational structures, tools, and best practices on how to successfully lead your product team. Our goal is to bring valuable insights to CTOs, CPOs of all seniorities. I myself am Mark Clemens, the founder and CEO of Code Control 9am. And for today's podcast, I'm very thrilled to have Monica with us. Thank you, Monica, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about today. I'm really thrilled.
Yes, me too. I really like, we had very great pre-conversation before the podcast, so very excited about this. Monica will say a bit more about herself in a second. She's head of engineering at Beyond, strong believer in agile methodologies, empowering individuals, and practicing a growth mindset. So I think we can go into it right away, Monica. Really nice that you're with us. And perhaps for the beginning, you could tell us a bit about yourself, where you're based, did your curriculum vitae look like?
Yes. So first of all, I'm going to steal your introduction from me. I think it's a great summary. So what I can tell you about me, I'm based in, let's start with the easy part. I'm based in Munich. I moved there like 10 years ago because I wanted to pursue a career in tech and especially in product. I'm originally from Italy, and there, especially back then, the scenery wasn't as how can I put it, as thriving as it is in Germany, especially when it comes to startups. I know I picked Munich over Berlin, and that is not exactly, like what people think about when they talk about the startup scene in Germany.
They think about Oktoberfest, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm in Valencia right now. But honestly, I think that in general, the German market is very exciting. Of course, there are finances that help with building startups, but I also think there is a different mindset when it comes to building products. And I think I was proven right. I'm still there after 10 years. So,
very nice.
So there's that. My CV is a bit weird. I mean, at this point, I've been working for I started working in 2009, so it's been a while that I'm on the market. But so I don't really talk about what I did in school or so on. But I actually, frankly, I stumbled upon this job over the years because I went to a high school that was about studying languages. Then I did 1 year of economics. And then I figured out that I was spending most of my time actually tinkering with my computer. I started being around computer when I was a little kid because my dad was just passionate about it. But I'm not the one person that, is like, oh, I started coding when I was 6 and I never stopped. I started and I stopped because I couldn't understand what I was doing. So that was always around.
What was that back in the day? QBasic or
Basic.
Yeah, basic.
I went to my dad. Of course, I'm dramatizing the experience, but that's basically what happened. I was like, Dad, what are you doing? I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. And I was like, can I do it too? Yeah, sure. Here is a book. And when I encountered strings, I couldn't wrap my head around it. So I was like, okay, I guess that gaming it is. That's what the computer is for, right? But I was always around computers, and at some point I was the one person that people went to in high school to figure out how to actually print this document. I just wrote it. How do you change font and stuff like that? So basically that was it. And then I was like, you know what? I should really try this thing. And they just opened what then became my bachelor degree, applied computer science in a town very close to my hometown. And I went there, and it was actually really good. All my teachers were very new, and they were young. That's what I mean. But this meant that they studied in the States. They did master degrees there, so they brought a lot of freshness to academia as a student, and that's where I think I noticed in hindsight, there was I got the first sponsorships. Basically, this is a topic we wanted to talk about. I found people that really encouraged me in, and they told me that I was good. I was
Yeah.
good at what I was doing. I remember there was one, it was an oral exam. So I had to write a bit of an essay and present it to the professor. And at the end of my exposition, the professor was like, this is not a thesis. Like, it's not a dissertation. It's like, you can shut it down. And then another exam, this was more practical. We had all practical written and oral exams. So I went there and I presented my project. It was an HTML editor with a little bit browsing capability and whatnot in Java, I think. And I went there and I started pointing out all the things that weren't working, all the problems it had. And my professor turned to me and was like, you have no idea what people bring to me. And I really do believe I'm not an excellent engineer. I'm a good engineer, but I'm not an excellent engineer. But like, this was the first time where I actually encountered how different was my perception of myself to what other people were seeing. I should have learned much earlier that
I
that
don't want to.
what it
I
would
don't
have
want
been.
to sound sexist, but is
Yeah.
this potentially already a female skill to be a bit more self-reflected? To say, I'm not
On,
sure this doesn't work.
I think it is. I mean, I'm not a sociologist. I'm just, that's my experience. But also talking with, again, bubble and whatnot, but I'm talking with my friends in different fields. The bar in our head is always so high. I was like, this is never going to be enough. This is never going to be enough. And this is actually one thing that it's very interesting now, being in relationships, in stable relationships, and going through finding a new job. And I'm there talking to my partner. It's like, oh, but look at this. They have so many requirements on their job posting. This was also happening to some of my friends. And our partner was like, just apply. It's like, worst case scenario, they're going to tell you no. And if they hire me, I was like, and I'm not good enough, it's like, that's their problem. They should have select better their candidates. It's like, how is this your problem? And this kind of
That's
mindset, it's
that's very
super.
interesting also with the job ads, because I think this is in HR something big where it's really like, how do you write your job ad to attract the right people? Because if you always just go way too high with your requirements, then you will lose out on people that might not oversell themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is something that is really real to me right now, because I've been in 2 hiring sprees since I joined Beyond in February. First round, I did a pretty job description, like a standard job description, like a bunch of stuff. It's like, yes, it was talking a little bit about the company, but I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. Also because I was very new to the company, so I still had to understand a few things. And I got something like 80 candidates. Only one was a woman. And I was like, what did I do wrong? It was like, I mean, the language is pretty standard, and so I also tried to reach out to there's a few people that are also helping you figuring out what can you do better when in terms of diversity, because it's not only a female versus men kind of like a woman versus men kind of problem. And this lady I was talking to, she was like, it's really also a pipeline problem. Like, there aren't as many candidates as women candidates as there are men. True. But in my personal experience, again, bubble, you guys get it, but it has to be more than 1/80. It's like, it should be worse. Like, best case scenario should be around 30%. And this is nowhere close to 30%. So true, it's a pipeline problem, but also, what can I do differently? There has to be something that I can do differently to increase the chances of people applying,
Yeah.
So this time around, what I did, I made it explicit. So I tuned the language a little bit so that it was honestly more welcoming. It was more, it's like, bubbly, kind of like
Yeah.
how I speak. That's it. And I made it explicit in the job descriptions, like even if you only check some of this requirements, get in touch.
Give
Uh,
it a shot. Yeah.
yes, and this time around, it's like it's not super. It hasn't increased like crazy, but I got roundabout. I think I doubled, if not tripled, the candidates. So from one, we went to three. Amazing. so,
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah, but it makes a difference, right?
yes,
Makes a difference on how you speak, on how you're welcoming, and on how you're understanding. To just
absolutely.
open it up to all people. Yeah.
Yes.
Very interesting. We jumped already quite
Yes.
directly.
Jump here
Um,
and there.
so
Um,
you've worked at different companies. You worked from agencies to bigger startups and now smaller startup.
yes.
Can you say a bit about that? How did that happen?
So again, it happened by, I would say, serendipity to some extent. And also because this was something that we also talked about in our pre-recording meeting. It's also because what I'm optimizing for is my learnings. So I started with agencies because that's what the market was mostly about in Italy, and to some extent still is. That's how you get your first jobs. It kind of like it's like a lot of people go and start working but for Accenture. It's consultancy. That's what it is, right? And you get your first projects and you start to, it's like having to deal with customers and so on and so forth. That's another factor that goes into my into my choice for the next step. Is like, what do I not enjoy about my current situation? So in the case of the agencies, what I didn't like was that frankly, the rate. You have to have someone that acts as your middleman, and that inflates your rate for the end customers, but you get a regular salary. Does that make sense?
That's why we highly advocate for freelancers always.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Second, I wanted to work on something that was meaningful to me, like that I could see the like people really valuing. And in this case, the kind of projects I was working on were not that interesting. It's like it's yet another corporate website, or it's yet another e-commerce. These are not problems that are interesting after a couple of times, or if they are not at scale. Like an
Mm.
e-commerce at scale, it's extremely interesting, but a regular e-commerce for a mom and pop shop in your hometown, it's like what do you have to learn the second time around? Not that much. So I decided to jump country, actually more than ship, and go abroad, because I could see that there were more interesting things to do there and I could learn more. So I was like, I can learn a new language, I can learn to live in another country, I can learn how to work in a more corporate environment. I mean, corporate in a bigger company,
Bigger.
basically,
Yeah,
more than like 5 people in a desk somewhere in a
yeah,
100,000 people city. So
yeah.
that's what I did, and I was lucky enough to come across this brilliant recruiter, Richard. Still love you to this day, and again, it was a matter of possibilities. I was like, I don't speak German very well. Does it really make sense for me to applying for a German company? I was like, yeah, don't worry, it's gonna be great. You will be a good cultural fit. I mean, cultural, characterial fit to this company. I've talked
Mm.
with the HR person, she's this and this way, and so on and so forth. So he really spent time trying to figure out if I would fit as a person into this team. And he kept checking on me. It's like afterwards, after they hired me, he called me a few times, like, "Hey, how are you doing? Is it all going all fine? Do you?" So I mean,
Nice.
he has
A really
incentives,
good recruiter. Yes, but still a
right?
really good recruiter. Most people just forget and say, "Oh,
Right?
whatever." Yeah.
And doing this after a couple of years. So we kept in touch for a couple of years after I was in the company. And this was past the time he should have been, rewarded for me staying there. I was telling him that I wasn't happy as much as I was at the beginning because things were changing. And what we were learning, what we were doing wasn't that interesting to me anymore because we were starting to be business to business, white labeling the product. So first it was an internal product, then they started selling it to other companies, and that wasn't interesting to me. I don't want to end up again having to deal with customers. So I was like, listen, I might have a good occasion for you. And then he introduced me to the next company. Again, he understood the kind of person I was. He understood the person that the company was looking for. So this, going back, like if we need to talk about what's important for a candidate or for you as a hiring manager, it's true that recruiters are expensive, and it's true that it's a mixed bag out there. But if you find a good one, stick to it, because that 20%, that 15%, it's worth it. I ended up staying for 5+ years in this company. And I went from an intermediate engineer to be a senior engineering manager, basically, because of the scope I was covering. I was only leading one team, but one team and a couple of people in other teams, but still. And I think in the end, it was a very beneficially, mutually interesting and valuable relationship that for me and this company. So that initial 10%, 15% that they pay the recruiter, I think it paid off.
Yeah, it paid off. And for you as well. So I think for both sides, right? If you find as a candidate a really good recruiter that you like and have a good relationship, would keep the relationship. Because it makes a great difference.
And after that, I decided to leave the company again because I felt like I could learn, but only in adjacent fields. Like maybe I could have moved team, maybe, and go in another area of our product, of our organization, but that was the extent of it. And I've been for so long in that company that, like, I don't want to brag, but I was one of the people that the rest of the company was listening to. And at some point I was like, are they listening to me just because I've been around for so long? Yeah, does my voice carries weight mostly because of that? So how can I push myself and try myself in a different environment? So that was one of the reasons why I decided to also change and go to the next company. And I knew at that point I knew what I was looking for. I knew the kind of culture and relationship that I wanted with, also with leadership. Like being a line manager and a middle manager is pretty tough, especially a middle manager. You get a lot of heat from both sides. And so I understood that it was important to me what the culture of the company was about. It wasn't as important to me what the product was about, but I still wanted to work on a product. So basically, my advice here is, along your career, try to figure out what do you value and what you don't. And it can be something like even a sentimental value to some extent. One of the things I cherish the most from one of my previous companies is the relationships I built there, where we're still friends. Most of us are still friends after years across different generations that got into that company. But it can also be what you value for your knowledge, for your career progression. Are you getting experience in the field you're interested in? I'm interested in leadership, therefore I want to look for companies that value the kind of leadership that the leadership school that I subscribe to. So there's that. And the reason why I joined this company was that one of the reasons was that I've never worked at this stage. This is a very small company. Like the whole company is literally 8 people, 2 of which are the founders.
So now the company beyond, right?
Exactly, the company I'm working for at the minute. And it's to me, it's interesting to observe how different and how similar to some extent things are. I've never worked at this stage of product development. We are pre-product market fit. How do you build a product from the ground up? How do you cope with the fact, personally, how do you cope with the fact that you don't have a huge feedback from your users? I was used to work for a product that had hundreds of thousands of users per month. And here we got, honestly, 3 active users over a month. It's like, it's very different, right? So again, my interest is to observe and see what I can learn from this situation. And of course, I mean, people pay me to do something, right? So I'm here to also bring my knowledge along with me, and to bring, I hope, an interesting perspective to how to build a culture, how to build an organization, and so on. But I also want to get something out of this relationship. And what I'm looking for right now is, yes, learnings.
Learning,
There's
yeah.
still, I mean, according to the German pension agency, I still have another 27 years to work.
Rather
Learning.
learn something along the way. Cool, yeah. Yeah, I think, and it's very interesting because when we spoke as well, it came up over and over, right? I needed another learning opportunity, and this one was really interesting for a learning opportunity. So it's really your number one North Star to see that you continuously are in a learning environment, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And how do you translate that into your team management? I mean, is there some way that you check in with people if they learn enough, or in the interviews when you search and assess?
So, wow, that's a tough one. Okay, so what I'm what I'm thinking about right now is that you can inflect learning in 2 ways. There's learnings you can do, like that you do about yourself as a person, and that is, like that growth mindset that everybody speaks about.
Mhm.
Can I learn from my failures? Can I just, like, pick up the pieces and start over again? Can I reflect
Mhm.
on what I did, and next time make a better decision? It doesn't have to be the
Yeah,
best, but is it better, right?
yeah,
um and the other one is learning in terms of, like, am I getting better at my job,
yeah,
from a pure skills and experience point of view? And how does that reflect on my managing of the team? So what I what I am try to be very careful about, conscious about, is that my take on life, let's say, or on work, is not everybody's. It cannot be everybody's, because everybody has different needs,
mhm,
and so that's where I value one-on-ones a lot. And I understand that some people are not familiar with it. This is honestly one of the things that I'm struggling right now, because I learned over the years how important having one-on-ones and a relationship with your manager, so that they understand what are your aspirations, what do you want, etc. But I also do understand that not everybody has experienced that.
yeah,
So it's this weird tool that you don't really know what to do with it. So it's a mixed bag at the minute. But one-on-ones are the moments in which I try to go deeper and understand who is the person that I have in front and what are their needs.
and what's happening
I
right now
Exactly,
with
like,
them?
I
Yeah,
came across people that weren't that interested in having the next step in their career. I was like, I'm content with what I'm doing. It's like, that's
yeah,
fine. Are they productive members of the team? Yes. Do they deliver? Yes. Fine
perfect.
enough. But I need to understand that this doesn't say anything about their value as a person.
Mhm.
I was like, their aspirations are just different than mine. So I try to be mindful of that. I also try, though, to push a little bit people out of their comfort zone. So I try to present them with opportunities for learning. So, like, would you be interested in trying this out? I think this could be something that helps you with X and Y. You always have to justify why you think something is important. But So in general, the personal growth part, I think that can happen with everyone and should happen with everyone, because nobody's perfect. So we all have things to learn about ourselves and the way we relate to others. On the knowledge and improvement of your skills and what you learn on the job, honestly, what I try to do is like, okay, this is the current formulation of my team.
Mhm.
This is the kind of skill set that I have. Sometimes it's not even really conscious as a plan, but I do see some patterns. It's a little bit what was happening when I was refactoring codes. Like, okay, there's a pattern here. Let me see what I can get out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I try to give people the opportunities that that can that could give them the chance to try those things out.
Mhm.
This person is showing me that they are good at, for example, there's someone that always speaks up in meetings. This could be someone that can really advocate for their whatever you call it. It could be a guild, it could be an academy, it was like whatever uh, you're naming
Could
for
be fit, yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
like exactly. So it could be something like that. It could be someone that they always contribute and they try to bring others to their level. So this is someone that could actually mentor other people, that could teach other people. So next time, let's expose them to the next junior. These kind
Mhm.
of things, like giving small opportunities here and there. And sometimes they're not evident, or I don't exactly say, and from tomorrow you're going to do this. But just let's try it out. I was
So that
saying,
goes
like,
a bit in the
sorry, you go.
direction of what you had with sponsors, right? Or mentors, to have people that back your skills and give you little opportunities to develop within those.
Absolutely, because it's very human. I don't know. Probably this is more common than what people think, but it's very human. It's like something is easy. It comes easy to you, and therefore you end up doing it over and over again, and you're getting good at it. Partially it's your
Yeah.
character, partially it's your personal inclination, partially it's your history. You have done this multiple times. There was this TEDx. No, no, not that I believe everything that is being said on TED Talks, but it was something that sparked some thoughts. And there was this one guy that was like, talent is really like 1-2% of how good you are at something.
Mhm.
Repetition is what makes you good at something. So true, there are things that as a person you are more inclined to do because they just fit you better. I don't mind talking, so I'm always talking in meetings. There are people that are excellent engineers, but they don't like to talk.
Mhm.
They don't like to be under the spotlight, but that can be limiting to their career. And very
Mhm.
often, as a manager of a team, I see myself a little bit like a coach, like a sports coach. I know that my goalkeeper will never be as good at attacking as my
No,
like
offense
my Del Piero
player.
or my Pirlo. But they still need to train in those things because they need to understand the other team. They need to understand what is going on, and if needed, the goalkeeper. If you get two people being kicked out of your team, your goalkeeper need to go and kick the goal. So that's why push
Yeah.
a little bit people out of their comfort zone, as long as it's not
Uh,
really uncomfortable to them, because that's where they are gonna get better. That's where you get
no,
most of your mm, return of investment,
no.
uh,
I have one more topic, and we're close to wrapping up already. But one more topic that I thought was really, really interesting when we were speaking before, and that is that you mentioned several times solving problems outside of the code.
yeah.
Um, Now, what does that mean?
What does that mean? So what it means is that we especially if you are in a technical leadership position. We all started, like tinkering with our computers and trying to find a technical solution to a problem we had. This is what gets most of the people, because you get this high from solving a problem on your own and look what I did, right? And this is why you go to college, or this is why you keep doing that and you start looking for a job in this field. But a job is very different from your hobby. So what it ends up happening is that you enter this very complex human systems, this human networks that are that's what you need to fix at some point. It's like you can solve problem in your code, but that is at the very end of this gigantic pipeline that goes from a business problem across the whole organization down to what you put in front of your customer. And if you keep it past a certain seniority, let's say, or past a certain tenure, if you keep solving problems at that level, you're missing out on a lot of value that you can bring to the organization. Again, a job is an exchange, right? It's an economic exchange. I give you some of my skills, you give me some of your money. Everybody's happy. But past a certain level, past a certain number of years, what was interesting to me to observe is like I was really in this rut. So I was the only person that was left of the original 3 people that worked on a specific system on one of my previous in one of my previous companies. And because it was about payments, I was really, really daily talking multiple times with customer support. And what I figured out is that I couldn't scale. It's like, it's only me. So I have my daily job. I have to work on new features, on blah, blah, blah. And these people need someone to solve their problems. And yes, I can put yet another ticket in the backlog, but is that going to solve the original issue? It doesn't. And it's going to take months maybe. So my question at that point was like, how can I make them not depending so much on me and my answers? And that's what I was mentioning when I said, how do you solve problem outside of the code? Coding is expensive, and the most valuable code that you're going to write is the one that you don't write. So how can you not incur in these expenses? And like all this friction, remove the friction.
So that means to me, I don't know, I would translate it perhaps into at least at a leadership, but potentially any developer needs to should develop some business sense / some product management sense. And the second that always comes to mind for me is there's always a third way. Because somehow we think often in this, I can do it or I can't. And then like, okay, how can we do it together? How can we find another solution that we haven't thought of, right? So this third way topic that we tend to forget because we're in our world and then there's someone else in their world.
Yes.
And yeah.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. In that case was, okay, let's create a Slack channel so that also you guys can talk to each other instead of sending me DMs. And let's have a page on our Confluence where it's basically an FAQ for customer support. And in hindsight, it's not rocket science. Like that's 101.
And it's just that every engineer should be able of doing, or is it for you mostly a leadership topic? Or you try to lead by example, and with that also try to inspire others.
So lead by example is a double-edged sword, because lead by example usually means that you need to do something for people to follow your lead, right? To see that that is valuable. Like do it by any means. But I think that leadership and management also sometimes, but especially leadership, means that sometimes you just need to leave a void so that people stumble and people fill in that gap. Otherwise, you're basically going to be a parent that always feeds their kids and they never learn how to fix an egg, a fried egg. It's like a fried egg is not that complicated, but if you always do it for them, they will never learn.
I would, sorry, but best statement ever, I thought, I think, for a topic of failure culture and no micromanagement. You need to leave a void so that they can fill it. I really love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. And I do think that if you want to be taken seriously as a senior engineer, you need to at least understand that you can't solve everything by coding things. You might not be inclined to talk to people or to have a lot of daily interactions. Find your own way. That's totally fine. Do you want to write something? Write something. Do that. Teach someone else and then let them do that. But think about it. You need to develop, it's true, you need to develop some level of understanding of how humans work, because you do work even if you don't like
For
it.
humans in the end.
Exactly. And
All your
that's the
code
problem
does,
you're
yeah,
to
or
solve.
whatever you do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's very interesting because, yeah, it's obviously always this discussion between love for technology and code and love for the solution. And I think it's the big difference when it comes to creating great products, that you actually think about the solution and how to solve a problem.
For me, one of the least true statement ever is the one that says, do something you love and you're never going to work a day in your life. That's BS. It's not true. Work is paid because it's not as pleasant. You would do other things otherwise,
Otherwise,
right?
you would spend money, exactly.
Right? Or you would pay someone else.
Exactly, you would pay someone else. Yeah.
So so when you go, this is what I would also say to people. It's like, you might love talking to people. I love talking to people to some degree. I like to solve organizational problems. It's still a job. It's still tough. It's still something that some days you don't want to do, but you have to do it. And in the case of becoming a software engineer, I think it's the exact same thing. Doing something on your computer, even in college, is going to be very different than what you're going to end up doing once you are going to do that as a job. So get into this career with a grain of salt. You're not going to be coding alone.
No, and I think it's really interesting. And then we have to wrap it up. But it means to me, if you choose a career in something, with something that interests you in a skill, but you choose also the whole package of the job. And that means that you need to, worst case, even force yourself to get some skills of the other elements that you need to do a good job. So to be not too blindsided, just say, oh, I love doing that and I just do that.
And it also helps you figuring out what you absolutely don't want to do and pick the right job for you next. I was like, where can I minimize this part that I really don't like?
Really great. I think we could chat for certainly another hour. Absolutely,
maybe another
no doubt. I just want to say we just do another episode. For now, thank you so much. Has been super, super insightful and interesting. I don't know, is there any book, resource, or any thought leader, or anything else that you say this is a must read, must listen, aside of our podcast, obviously? Please subscribe and please give us a like. Anything else that pops to mind?
Shameless plug. If you want to keep hearing me rambling, I also have a podcast. Maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Very good. Yes, for sure.
Beyond, but it's not related to the company I'm working for right now. It's different. It's also about the intersection between leadership and tech. It's not only me. I have a partner here at the idea, and we're having a lot of fun there. He's a senior contributor, so you get a little bit of both sides. But beside that, because it's mostly ramblings, if I were to, like, the first thing that comes to mind, so there are two things. One is fictional, one is not. The non-fictional one, Turn the Ship Around. It's by a former, I think it's a former captain of the American Navy, of the US Navy. And he tells his story of how he turned the ship around, in the sense of like how he made this submarine that was known for being the place where careers go to die to be one of the most excellent units in the Navy. And it's very interesting, his approach to leadership, because it's very different than what we usually think about the army, you know.
Okay,
And
interesting. Very intriguing.
it's super interesting. He also wrote other books. I think the other one was like Leadership is Language. Language is very important when you become a manager, the way you conduct yourself and so on. So totally recommend him, any of his work. The second one is fictional, and it's a series. It's 3 books. It's a trilogy, and it's the Radch Empire. I will also send you the
The
title.
link's perfect for
But
the show
you can
notes. Yeah.
start with Ancillary Mercy, if I'm not mistaken. That's the first installment of the trilogy, and it's fictional. It's sci-fi, so if you're not digging that might be a bit of a problem. But I think there are here and there some nuggets of gold when it comes to, again, how do you conduct yourself as a leader, even a leader that is not recognized as one, but how you feel yourself in this, how do you feel about yourself in this position, and how you should think about the people around you and the people you serve, because ultimately that's what it is. That's what leadership is. Management, tricky, different, but
really, really nice and very nice recommendations. I love them. Both of it I didn't know, and both of them sound very intriguing. Thank you so much, Monica. We'll
thank
definitely do another session, and I will definitely also look into check out your podcast. And for everyone else, please also do. We'll link it in the show notes. And then for today, thank you very much for listening
thank
to
you so
today's
much for the
Top
opportunity.
Tech
It
Leader.
was a blast.
Yes. Yeah, it really
Next
was. Thanks. And again, please leave us feedback and like and subscribe. We love to hear from you. Until next time, keep coding, keep leading. Thank you.
Bye.